me facilitating this workshop. So for the first half hour, we're just going to do group work in using three thinking skills to think through the Afghan war and be creative about how we can possibly end it. Sorry, the cable is not ready, but I'll just describe the first thinking skill that we're going to apply for this Afghan war problem is the critical thinking skill. So if you would just write down three things that we would try to do in our groups now. Oh yes.
We were short of 8, maybe. I have 10, you can share a pen.
Should I go to the front and get my canvas? I have plenty of paper. You know what? I'm going to get a
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry, for.
Yeah. Write down paper.
Someone was offering a tablet.
I'll take the paper.
Is it recyclable paper?
Not sure, it's about 10 years old. That's a record.
It has been recycled.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you're familiar with the critical thinking skills, so this is not new to you, but we'll apply these three simple steps of the critical thinking skills to a question about the Afghan war. So the first step is to ask questions and to have lots of doubts, and then to test our thought, and then to find some evidence. And this is the scientific way of criticizing any issue, to try to differentiate between fact and everything else other than fact. Why? Because many educators like Henry Giroux says that this crisis that we have, which is really a very interrelated crisis, compels us to think critically and act courageously, and that it's no longer an option, it's a necessity for us to survive if we want to think about how to end any war, including the Afghan war. So I'll tell a little story about applying this thinking skill among Afghans. We had 3 Afghan young people, and they were from 2 different ethnic groups that are divided. They hate one another. So they went to a meeting. All 3 of them are peace volunteers. And after the meeting, one of them said, well, the people from my ethnic group are the people who love peace. The people from your ethnic group, you never find them joining any of our meetings. So you are the bad people and we are the good people. I couldn't stop that. They had a mini war among themselves. But later, I brought them through this process of questioning, doubting, testing this idea that one ethnic group is better than the other, and then finding some evidence. And finally, now they're working together in the same peace group. So let's apply this question to our first exercise. If the US military withdraws completely from Afghanistan, it is thought by some people that the Taliban or ISIS will take
Music is a powerful
control
tool that can
of
influence
Afghanistan.
behavior.
So if you would work in groups of maybe 2 or 3, feel free, ask each other questions, test it, and then try to look for some evidence if you have something in your minds. And if you can't find the evidence, you have your laptops with you or your smartphones, go online and try to look for some evidence of this, of whether if the US military withdraws from Afghanistan, the ISIS or Taliban will take control of the whole country. So, about 5 to 10 minutes on this question. Thank you. Just with the person next to you.
We're not here. Okay. I didn't see. I have to admit that that's where I know that you're talking about. Yeah, they just have a mention. That's the question I've been asking, is that
That's the medium pretty over the years.
Yeah, I think that's what we've all been led to do. We withdraw the Taliban and fight over even peace initiative is called fraud and suggested it be like Vietnam. They ignore the peace I know at one point we weren't so negative about the Taliban.
they were trying, it seemed like.
As trying to control it.
Right. And it broke down. It just
Temporary.
started it up again. So there's some indications.
Except again, you can kind of control the bodies in operation. So you don't really get other perspectives.
That's a good point.
But that, exactly that.
Yeah, I know. You're trying to be a devil's advocate here with you're starting
Personal ISIS, neither section of the Taliban existing states are for U.S. ISIS is that really can't happen unless the U.S. officials agree and hold the United States uses Taliban
the devil's
ISIS and Taliban use the United States presence. So that's what you have to do there. You have to provide the reason for existence to
Yeah, you're really
around.
But it's also, I mean, to go back, I remember
Didn't agree.
we really were responsible for the Russians are in support supported
Taliban.
they were really
There's no examples of
Al-Qaeda.
We're not here to they want to do it, but they didn't know.
It's kind of ironic
Borders are currently there, nothing there. Society. That's the only way. Part of the Taliban is better known was John B. and
Put the shot in. Oh yeah, you know, it's like we only go so far back in history that we forget.
I know that they
Okay, just maybe a minute more. So many
Too many good.
So we're
If they have to
United States can't stand it. It's been there for 18 years now.
They're very strange. Actually, after World War II, we had a surplus of arms. So we sold arms to everybody, and we sold arms
There's been more
to Ho
violence
Chi
in the last
Minh.
few months with the U.S. staying there than there has been.
Ho Chi Minh is considered at the time to be like the short
I don't have any belief that that's going to stop the United States leaves. It's good to me. I also fear these next months are going to be even more violent with the U.S. there. It's not going to.
Well, thank you. We do have two other questions with two other types of thinking skills. So I know this will create many questions and doubts in your mind, and we would have fulfilled the purposes of our workshop, which is not to find any answers, but to keep asking those questions. And the reason why I chose this question together with Kathy Kelly was because the United States government sometimes would claim that that's the reason why they need to be in Afghanistan forever. If they leave, the Taliban will take over, and that's terrible for Afghans, so we need to be there permanently. But let's hear you. Let's just be very spontaneous. So anyone with any question, doubts, a way, a method that you could test that idea, or some evidence that you have found before this workshop, go ahead.
Yeah, it's always the propaganda of the colonial power, whether it be Africa or Asia. If we withdraw, the French withdraw from this country in Africa or the UK, there'll be chaos behind, because these ethnic groups will kill each other, and they say to send Ireland and the whole lot. So you always have that kind of the colonial power propaganda. These guys, and it's presently today with US around the world, like, you know, we're going around with peace in our agenda, keeping these horrible people from killing each other, the Sunni or the Shia or ISIS and all that. But we're not told that covertly they're stored in this trouble. They're giving guns and weapons to one rebel group so they can have fighting going on. But all the media portrays this peace-loving nation, the US, going around the world to stop these tribal groups and ethnic groups and religious groups killing each other. Like, you know. But there is some reality. But even though they're covertly stored in this sectarian, the division, we've got to be concerned about how do we get the colonial power from yesterday or today, like, to support a structure emerging from these societies, like, you know, institutions that they can trust.
Thank you. So many questions related to that, as in who is supporting the Taliban, who is arming them, how did they start in the first place? Are the very same people who are fighting them the ones who have started those groups? Is the US responsible for starting the Taliban? And now is using the Taliban as an excuse to stay, the colonial agenda.
That's what we were talking about when we said when the United States supported the Mujahideen against the Russians, you know, then we loved them, and they were our allies, and they were freedom fighters, and now all of a sudden they're no longer freedom fighters; they're a terrorist group.
Very good. Thank you. I am reminded now that David and his organizers wanted a report back at the main meeting. So if one of you would just volunteer so that throughout this workshop you could just take some notes, and then it's a 2 or 3 minute report back at the main group. Would anyone?
Someone to take their
Oh.
Okay.
Would you? Oh, thank you very much. And thank you. Yes.
Say, I don't know very much about Afghanistan, and I apologise for that in the history, but I don't know why the UN, why has America got to be the saviour, and why can't the UN or some independent agency come in?
It's a very good question. Why is the US responsible to save Afghanistan?
I mean, I just asked the question was, does it matter if they do? So the question that started, if they withdraw completely, Taliban ISIS will take control of Afghanistan. Well, yes, maybe, but does it matter? So I was just asking, we were sort of discussing whether the question was the right question to be asked.
Yeah,
We were saying the
that's
same
the
thing.
use of that, yeah.
The entire question was flawed.
Does it matter? I mean, even if the Taliban...
Is it our...
No, but the way they're posing the question, like, you know,
It's either
obviously,
this or that.
it's either this or that.
But I haven't talked to anyone in Afghanistan in recent years about this, but my first visits when I was there and asking more questions, many Afghans believe that when there's Taliban fighting in different places, that actually the United States military actually helps them move. And there certainly is, we know that there are, for example, moving military equipment and petrol from Pakistan into Afghanistan, that there are, the US military, this is not a secret, it does actually pay off the Taliban to be able to, you know, so that the US forces can move their equipment across the country. So I think this idea that they're kind of hand in glove, and if they are opponents, they're more, rather than more enemies, they're more like rival football teams or something. But they also give each other the reason to exist. I mean, just as the question here, if the U.S. withdraws completely, the Taliban or ISIS will take control of Afghanistan. A lot of people believe that it's the U.S. forces there that people tolerate and even give support, not because they are ideologically, you know, fundamentalist, you know, Islamists, but because the country's being occupied and somebody's resisting.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways. The permission is given, you know, the excuse is going both ways. But I think I like the idea that we don't, that the question itself is flawed. But you know, we can't test it without the U.S. leaving. But we know that in recent months, you know, especially with the so-called peace talks, the violence has only increased. So it's like if we say that if the United States leaves, there'll be more violence and the Taliban will grow more powerful. Well, that's happening anyway.
Yes. Brian has mentioned an important point, and we can search this online, that in the presence of the US NATO forces in Afghanistan, civilian casualty rates in the past 3 years have every year hit record levels. So the war is making things much worse for ordinary Afghans. That's not the reason, you know, Taliban is not the reason, therefore, for them to stay. One last thing.
Well, yeah, no, I was just going to say, in one sense, yeah, I suppose the question is, you know, somewhat flawed, but in another sense, I think it's a brilliant question, because I think any time you ever, you know, mention anything about, you know, Afghanistan, people always come up with that answer, you know, so I think it's great to look at that question, you know, and also, you know, just think about kind of, you know, the Taliban, like, you know, are the Taliban locals, you know, and I know that kind of, like all armies, do dreadful things, you know, but at the end of the day, they are local, and there's young people joining the Taliban because, well, I assume they get some food if they join the armies anyway, but they've nothing else to do. They can leave the country, or they can die of starvation, or they can join the Taliban, or maybe the Americans, or whatever. So I think the whole question is, you know, are they locals? You'd have to look into that whole idea, and presumably, I'm just saying, yes, I think they are, and if they are, it is their country, you know. You need to kind of bring more kind of trade unionists and all those kind of people in with kind of the locals and do something. We need to get foreign powers out. But that's kind of the whole questioning I would have.
Thank you very much.
Just a short one. It would be great to be able to say, well, let the Afghan people choose who they to be their leaders and that sort of thing. And when they did this, was it back in the 70s, and they chose the Najibullah government, which was a socialist government, which of course America had to then do the old regime change by armament training the Mujahideen, who then started to infiltrate, undermine the whole show, and that sort of thing. It's so difficult. It's okay if you vote in a good old right-wing government, but if you vote in a socialist government, then you have the bad guys. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because America always then starts doing, we have to get rid of that. And then there's the whole heroin industry there.
Sure.
I mean, what would America do? You've got half of America stuck on opioids.
Afghanistan is the largest producer of heroin in the world, and it's got the most number of drug addicts in the world.